What is this face? Hello and welcome to the Grand Line Review, your source for everything One Piece. My name is Liam, but it might not be. I mean, I could be lying for all you know. But today we are here to talk about dragons. Dragons singular, dragons plural, dragons paternal, and even dragons maternal. Because my attention has been brought to a very particular dragon-based theory done by a small YouTuber, because most of the best theories tend to come from very obscure sources. And in this case, such a source would be named Dawn of the World, an upcoming and more importantly, Australian One Piece channel. So if you enjoy my style of weird, dry humor, then you'd probably enjoy hers as well, so I'll leave a link in the description to her channel. But let's talk about this dragon idea. Wait, no. Things first. Very important things because our subscribers of the day are Jolfgard, Walnut Boy, and Meatwad 00. That's probably one of the best names we've had so far. In any case, these three did an amazing thing, which was to press the subscribe button for the Grand Line Review, thus resulting in consistent injections of One Piece culture administered directly into their YouTube feeds. And if you want to be our next subscriber of the day, then hit that button and please do say hi in the comments below if you are a new or even old member of the Grand Fleet. We appreciate both. Welcome. And now, let's blow our minds with some dragon.
What I'm going to be shining a light on today is a pretty crazy theory about an immense secret of world-shattering proportions.
So the secret in question being referred to as Dragon's entry in the One Piece Vivia card databook. There's this quite fascinating part where it states that his card hints towards a secret within his past. And it even says that if his subordinates learn the truth, they would still follow him without a doubt. Very much implying that on the scale of secrecy, this is towards the more bad end. And that secret was pretty widely speculated on, and it went in a couple of super weird directions. The weirdest of all was coming up with an idea that Dragon was in fact a celestial dragon, but there were also some more mild takes, such as the secrecy simply being that he had a son, because none of the Revolutionary Army knew about Luffy's connection to Dragon prior to the Paramount War saga, not even Sabo. Although to be fair, Sabo didn't know much about anything at the time, because he had very conveniently timed brain problems. But Dawn is proposing a very different option as to what this secret may be.
As mentioned, Dragon is Luffy's father, Garp is Luffy's grandfather, but Dragon is not Garp's son. Because don't you find it weird that Garp has never once referred to Dragon as his son?
And you know what? I didn't actually find that weird until you went and pointed it out. It's not something I've consciously noticed, but if you do go back through the series, Garp's wording when it comes to Dragon seems quite purposely ambiguous. Like say this panel where Garp's line referring to Luffy is "You're just my kid's kid," which is very similar in the original Japanese where he says something along the lines of "You're my child's child," going to great lengths not to use the word son or any strict identifier of a certain dragon. Now, to be fair, sometimes this sort of thing does happen with strained family relationships. For example, my mother would always refer to her sister as my aunt as opposed to her sister, because I guess it's a way to distance yourself from a strained relationship. My YouTube viewers have now become my therapist. But it could also imply something far, far more interesting.
What I'm obviously trying to get at is that Garp isn't Luffy's paternal grandfather like we've always thought, but his maternal grandfather, meaning that Luffy's mother, Ms. Monkey, as most mysterious and enigmatic figure in One Piece as she is Garp's child in question.
So this is a very fun idea, and it is backed up by fictional genetics, because Luffy and Garp bear quite striking similarities to one another, especially when you look at pictures of young Garp. He is the spitting image of Luffy. And then when you look at Oda's drawings of old Luffy, well, he is the image of Garp, spitting rather unceremoniously on the floor, as the elderly in my area tend to do for some reason. Please stop. And Dragon, well, there's no great way to say it, he just doesn't fit. And if Luffy's mother was completely unrelated to Garp, then Luffy's genetic pool makes it extraordinarily unlikely that he'd pop out looking exactly like Garp. However, if Mr. Garp had an alluring, violent, and potentially very punchy daughter, then this lineage would make a lot more sense. And this resemblance would then travel down the monkey line. And yes, I know his name is Monkey D. Dragon, but we will get to that. But first, just because Dragon doesn't happen to share the same aesthetic qualities of Luffy or Garp doesn't mean that he is genetically alone in this world.
There is someone who does share a strong resemblance with Dragon, however. Granted, we haven't had that good a look at him and is old enough to have been his father. father. And that is, have you guessed it? Do you see where this is going? Rox D. Zebek.
And I did guess it. I did see where it was going, and it terrifies me. It's also a potential connection I've never quite personally put together until now. I mean, granted, this is all rampant speculation based on 2 pieces of artwork, both of which are silhouettes actually, so that only adds more credibility. But it's a very cool idea, and one that I think breaks quite nicely from the overpowering mold of Blackbeard son of Zebek connection theory things out there. Unless Blackbeard and Dragon are brothers, but let's not go down that road quite yet. But let's just entertain this for a bit, because Dragon being son of Zebek, and then we have Luffy, who is Dragon's mother, what? But let's just entertain this for a bit, because Dragon being the son of Zebek, and Luffy's mother, who needs a name, and whenever someone needs a name in One Piece, I ask you, the Grand Fleet, to name them for me. And according to the most upvoted comment, Luffy's mother is now called Alligator. Monkey D. Alligator, or perhaps even LED Gator, I suppose. All I know is that the Crocomom theory is working its way into this video, so I'm always a fan of that. But this story of Dragon and Alligator becomes a tale of 2 star-crossed, scaly lovers.
We have the daughter of the hero of the Marines. We have the son of the worst pirate ever, who the world government wants erased from history.
And look, it's a bit tropey, but then again, so is One Piece as a whole. It's quite innovative in how it tells a story, but less so in exactly what the story is. And given how Luffy does seem to be the center of the universe, I think this would not be the most outrageous reveal in the world. And in fact, it can be quite difficult to find a story that doesn't make use of this particular trope in some way, shape, or form.
The trope of this kind of forbidden romance is probably one of the most classic story elements of all time, going back centuries and centuries. Even Romeo and Juliet was inspired by another, even older story of star-crossed lovers, and so on so forth for as long as humans have had stories to tell.
Just look at Dragon being all smooth with Alligator there. And then there's Garp in the background just kind of awkwardly walking in. And just as a question, did your parents ever walk in on you when you had, how shall we say, company? Because mine did. So I feel this picture. I feel it deep, deep within my soul.
Also, this panel of Whoop Slap at the end of chapter 96 would carry a lot more weight. His dream? Or his fate.
And just because you didn't have enough of my attention already, you've now gone and added this glorious visage of Whoop Slap. It's a great panel though, because whilst nobody ever seems to remember him, Whoop Slap is clearly one of the very rare individuals in this world who knows certain secrets about our dear Luffy. And we should never forget that, but it's now time to address the whole name thing.
And yes, this would mean that Dragon's name is technically Rox D. Dragon.
Rox D. Dragon, yeah. Has a nice ring to it. As for why he wouldn't use the Rock's name, I think that's fairly straightforward. Obviously, the world government have gone to some pretty great lengths to remove any trace of rocks from global history, and they've done a great job as well, because not only did they get rid of the name, they also made an entire island disappear that now nobody has ever heard of either. So to avoid being targeted, adopting the monkey name does make a bit of sense. Although my question then becomes, why would you pretend to be the son of God? I mean, if you're trying to keep yourself on a bit of a low profile and a bit of secrecy, then loudly and proudly declaring a clear connection to the most famous Marine who has ever lived probably isn't the greatest of ideas. However, it does still lean quite nicely into One Piece as we know it.
It would also lean into one of the other great thematic motifs of the series, that the sins of a father should not be passed on to a child, and the act of just existing is not a crime.
And I love this because we have another example of this in the series with Ace. Garp took on raising Roger's son, and it would be quite thematically on brand if Garp had done something similar with Rox's son. Not so much out of respect for Rox, but because of his belief that the sins of the father are not the sins of the son. Although it does bring up a bit of a weird thought, because Dragon would have been around 12 or 13 when Rox was defeated, so if Garp did adopt him, and he and LED Gator had a little something going on, then it would have been a literal, what are you doing, stepbro, kind of moment, you know? So thankfully, there is another option.
Another major reason Dragon would have taken the monkey name is the Japanese practice known as Mukuyoshi, or adopted son-in-law. This is an occasional occurrence in which a man marries a woman with a family of distinctively higher social standing than his own and takes her family name as opposed to the woman traditionally taking the man's name.
And this one is a little more Romeo and Juliet style. Dragon, who grew up as the son of Rox, falls in love with an alligator and through Mukuyoshi becomes a monkey. With Garp thinking, well yeah, your dad was a bad dude guy, but welcome to the adopted family, son, husband, happened, thus elevating Dragon from his heritage and at the same time also making sure that any future spawn, aka certain Luffy's, would be free of the legacy of rocks. Although Rocksteady Luffy, that has a certain ring about it as well.
And One Piece wouldn't even be the only series where we see this happen. Just look at some of the other big names that come out of Jump. Uzumaki, Kushina's name, Kurosaki, Masaki's name. It wouldn't even be the only example of this in One Piece itself.
So in a way, at least One Piece would be in keeping with the other big three. But to bring Blackbeard back into the discussion, this would further his and Luffy's connection. Because not only are they both D's aiming to become the Pirate King, but if Blackbeard does have some Zebekian heritage about him, then Teach may end up becoming Luffy's uncle or some sort of weird black sheep relation. And just as a thing, I myself am not a big fan of the whole special heritage angle. I tend to prefer the solid underdog stories where a character comes from just nowhere, rather than say Luffy kind of coming from nowhere, but also with the power of genetics, heritage, inherited will, and even the full force of fate on his side. Although to be fair, Oda has pulled it off quite well so far, and that's another reason why I think I can see this dragon idea happening. Because Luffy is already the center of this universe, so why not build him into rocks as well, which in turn would give him this weird connective tissue to Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido. But also, let's give some extra D.
Side note, this would also mean that like Ace, Luffy would have inherited a D from both sides of his family, like two crescents joining together to make a circle. How about that?
Yep, Luffy is the Illuminati confirmed. But in some seriousness though, that's another thing that I've never thought of. The idea of the spawn of two separate threads of the D-Clan coming together to make that fabled moon symbol. Like, I don't want to buy too deeply into it because I do tend to get a little bit carried away with the moon stuff, but it would fit well enough, so why not? And perhaps one D makes a crescent moon whilst two Ds makes a glorious round sun, but now we do risk going back to kindergarten because all we're talking about are letters and shapes. So what about Brazil?
Furthermore, the other part of Rocksteady Zebek's namesake was a pirate named Rox the Brazilian because he was active and operated in, you guessed it, Brazil, which is where Luffy would be from if he were born into the real world.
And that last part is true. If you're not familiar, Oda stated that Luffy would be from Brazil if Luffy was from the real world, which he is not, but if he was, Brazil. Which is a cool connection, but fun as it is, it's veering a bit too much into the tinfoil direction for me. However, if it does turn out to be true, then whether Oda intended this or not, and he probably didn't, it would still be a pretty mind-blowing Easter egg.
Even if Dragon is Garp's spawn after all this, which I'm not entirely convinced, it'll just mean that Luffy's mother could be Zebek's daughter, and the star-crossed lovers / two sides of the same coin component of this theory still stands.
And all I have to say about this is that this would be like a full-on Electra complex. Like just the thought of Ali D. Gator setting out into this world to find someone who looks exactly like her father Rox is, well, it'd be a choice.
If nothing else, at this point I'm convinced that Rocksteady Zebek is Luffy's other grandfather, and that Luffy is the son of the child of the worst pirate ever, and the child of the hero of the Marines.
So this whole dragon thought process is really cool, and despite the fact that I'm not a huge fan of theories, I really like this one, and I would encourage you to check out Dawn's full video on her channel, linked in the description below. And also, let's get that subscriber count up because 400 is just way too low. As well as check out this wonderful next video because there's always more to learn, explore, and experience with this wonderful series, so I look forward to seeing you there.